I went from living like monks, living out back of the trunk, to pockets of fat with the monks, pockets of fat like the clubs. Now I am living like Trump. Now I am living like Trump. Mimosas and mimosas, mimosas and mimosas, mimosas and mimosas. The Morris Costa Nostra, pulling up in Testarossa, we charging the debt, discharging the debt, discharging the debt, we charging the jet. Swipers on deck, ciphers on deck, ciphers on deck, wipers on deck, wipers on deck. My life is on check, my life is on check, my life is on tubes, my life is a Jew, my life is on you. My wife is on two, my wife is on two. I'm going for three, you know it is me. Red is the pillar, the jet is my pillar.
Peace, family. Welcome to another episode Underground Railroad Productions. This is your host, Brother Rich. As you can see, well, introduce yourselves for the family once again.
Hi, everyone. This is Ayanna.
Brother Red. Peace.
Yeah, we out here
Peace.
on 125th. Nice summer day out here. Is it supposed to rain today? I see the clouds.
It might, yeah.
Yeah, it look like it might rain. This might not be too long. But listen, man, the talk of the town, the internet is going wild. The most influential couple, I guess you could say, one of the most influential couples in black culture and hip-hop culture, Jay-Z and Beyonce. Jay just released a new album, and it's a lot of maturity in the album. Let these bikers go by. That's a Harlem thing. Yeah, a lot of
Maturity.
Yeah, a lot of maturity in the album. The brothers admit a lot of mistakes he's made as a young man. And one of the things that was addressed in his album was, what do you call that, infidelity, Red? That's what they call
infidelity.
it? Right. So I don't know if that happened while he was married to Beyonce, but the fact that, you know, he slept around on Beyonce or wasn't faithful to Beyonce, because she came out with the Lemonade album, you know, basically saying that, you know, this dude cheated on me or whatever.
With Becky with the long hair.
Yeah, Becky. And it's a very, 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 very interesting conversation within the black community, because we always talk about how we can't do it, the man and woman can't do it alone. It has to be this type of unity between the man and the woman, and we got to get back to these two-parent households. Keep saying that, we're going to keep saying it because repetition is the best teacher. One of the reasons why households continuously get broken up, besides a lot of systemic reasons, is the fact that the issue of, you know, Papa was a Rolling Stone, men creeping out on his girl, dudes not wanting to be faithful or be committed with his woman. So what I want to ask you, Red and Ayanna, today is this idea of being faithful to a woman. And we're going to approach it from the man being faithful to a woman, because that's what the album is kind of based on and the song is kind of based on. So this idea of a man being faithful to a woman, is this, I've heard many different ideas on it. Is this a Western idea? I heard a lot of what you would call conscious pro-black brothers saying that's some Western-ish, that's some colonized-ish. We're the sun and the women are the planets, and they're supposed to rotate around us. And it's not natural for anybody to be committed to one person. So by the way, this coming from a person, this coming from a, yeah, I'm laughing at this one. This is coming from a brother who's been committed to his wife for over a decade. So I made
on that, King.
Yes. But talk to me about it. Is this a Western? I would love to start out with Ayanna. What do you think about this idea of being in a relationship with a man and him telling you, yo, listen, it's not natural for me to be faithful to you. I love you and I respect you, but I want more than one woman, because this is an African way of living. And they could go to the books, they could go to the coaches, they could take you overseas and show you that. What is your thoughts and ideas about that, Ayanna?
I think oftentimes what happens is that men are not, and also women are not taught to be honest and forthright about what they're looking for when they even connect. And a part of that basis is kind of this European ideology of romance. This thing that we've been taught of how men and women should relate when there's some kind of physical interest or physical attraction. So with romance comes this, and again, it's a Europeanized concept because we have the story of Cinderella, we have the story of Rapunzel, we have all of these fairy tale ideas of men saving us and taking care of us and being the apple of their eye, and that's deeply set in romance. Another piece of romance is that there's a negative connotation of what it means to love and commit to someone. So once you love someone romantically, it means you're not attracted to anyone else anymore. And if you are, I have the right to be jealous and interrogate that. It means that all of your time and energy should be spent up in the relationship. Everything else that might help us grow, we need to be cut off of. Even if that means our families, even if that means our professional,
friends, some of our growth, friends, our co-workers,
our dreams, right. So we have these certain unrealistic standards and expectations of how someone should romantically be interested in us. And romance has nothing to do with spirituality. Spirituality has to do with recognizing someone's purpose and reason within this universe and supporting them in it. Regardless if it means that your personal expectations might not be met. Spirituality also has to do with communication, which romance doesn't leave a lot of space for. So, you know, I have fallen victim to learning how to relate to men in a romantic way, which of course creates failure. It of course creates disappointment. It of course creates kind of skewed expectations and unrealistic boundaries, unrealistic desires. It creates a lot of self-esteem problems on both sides. It creates I want to speak a little bit about men. I think a part of what men are taught subconsciously is that they can never really fully satisfy one woman, right? Because it's impossible to satisfy someone's romantic expectations. So they're kind of taught that, you know, I'm never gonna fully be able to satisfy, so it serves me best to always be looking for someone who at least will be pleased with me for as long as I can make them happy. And when it comes to romance, that's a very short term, you know, you can't have long-term commitment when you're dealing in romance. Romance is doomed to end, you know? Romance is about the honeymoon stage. It's about how long can I keep this mask on until they find me out.
La La
It's
Land.
about, right. It's about no real emotional intimacy, no real true forming a basis for figuring out, can I trust this person? Does this person connect with me emotionally and spiritually? Romance has a lot to do with physicality, which is one of the kind of lowest levels of connecting with someone. It's very surface, it's very material.
Yes.
So those are a piece of my ideas around this idealism around romantic commitment.
Excellent. Beautifully stated. Beautifully stated. When I hear the word romance, it always takes me back to the book that Brother Polite did called Roman Antics. And when we talk about romance versus, you know, or if romance is being influenced by Western society, I would say that we have to examine the culture, because how you were brought up in the culture dictates the way that you approach your relationships. So let's just quickly take a look at our culture. What were your parents taught? What were your parents taught? How were your parents groomed? And how were they taught up by the surrounding society? First, it starts at home. How did their parents teach them how to deal with each other in terms of relationships? We know that when we look back there was this quote unquote antique, this old school way of getting, you know what I mean?
Antiquated,
This
yeah.
antiquated way of relationships that the grandparents or the great grandparents would teach our parents. Listen, you need to get with that person. You know what I'm saying? Y'all gonna settle down.
They're a good
You're gonna
bet.
that's a good man. If he messes up, you make sure that you don't walk out on him. Forgive him for his antiquities and things of that nature. The children are most important. Raise the children. If he's hitting you, if he's physical and things of that nature, pray to Jesus. You know what I'm saying?
Forget if he's an alcoholic.
If he's a womanizer, if he's a gambler, if he's a sexual predator, a lot of these things, they turn the other cheek. When we go back and we listen and we read some of the accounts that our grandparents and some of our parents went through, what took place was there was a changing of a culture. The dichotomy of that has to be factored in, that the hip hop culture came in the 70s and changed things around in a very effective way. So we went from the era. There was a meme that somebody put out before where they showed all of the top songs in 1975 compared to all of the top songs in 2015. So the songs in 1975, the titles of the songs were all dealing with love.
We grew up on love.
All
I grew
dealing
up
with
on love.
all dealing with expressions of the heart,
Yeah.
affairs of the heart. I'm not saying romance. I'm talking about affairs of the heart.
That's
I'm
right.
speaking of love, appreciation. Then the songs that you saw in 2015 only dealt with what you were saying, objectifying physical attributes, sexual, over hypersexualization, things of that nature. So when you deal with hip hop and you deal with the "we don't love these hoes" mentality, right? You have to factor in what suffered in the long run. What was the sufferation? If you look around and you see the conditions that our people are in, if you look around and you see the condition that the children are in, if you have a conversation with a millennial, if you have a conversation with people that are my age, if you have a conversation with the youth that are in their preteens, then you're gonna see that something changed. So the culture, soap operas, what was being taught in the soap opera era,
Drama.
the culture of the talk shows, the daytime talk shows, Ricky Lake, Maury, what's the other ones? Richard Bey, Jerry Springer, all of that. What was being taught about relationships? What was being taught about the value that one sex, one gender was given towards the other gender? You got to examine that. What took place in the music, in the culture, the 90s era, okay? The 2000 eras, the Bad Boy era, the Death Row era, the Murder Inc. era, all of these eras, the Rough Rider era, all of these eras, the Dipset era, all of these eras have to be examined because they were teaching our children how to deal with each other from a sexual nature, from a relationship nature, and from a value system. It was deteriorating slowly, okay? Because they were not preaching what we knew was the glue that held the people together, and that was unadulterated love. That was conditioning. That was what Jay-Z is articulating now in his late 40s about the family being most important and not splitting up regardless of what that was not the message that we were receiving in the 90s. That wasn't the overall message that we were receiving. Money, cash, hoes, big pimping and other things. That was the message that we were getting. So because that was the dominant culture, because that was raising up people who did not have fathers, that's the big homie, okay? Because that was the overall, that was the word. That was our daily bread. People took that and they ran with it. And we also have to factor in the crack era or the crack culture and what that created. The splitting of the families, the father being gone, the mother being cracked out, the babies being raised by babies, things of that nature. So there was a lot of deterioration, devaluing. There was a lot of quote unquote stripping of the fabric that held us together in the 70s. Because when I think about black love, of all of the eras, there's an era that stands out to me that exudes black love, and that was the 70s.
Yeah.
But
Those ebony covers and jets. Go ahead.
what I'm saying is, even within black love, even within those generations, when our music was the best, and we had Marvin Gaye, brothers were still creeping on the sisters.
Yes.
Same thing.
Okay.
We're more savage about it right now with the lyrics, you know, money, cash, hoes, and all of that. But it seems like it's always been that way. So once again, I'm saying, is it a Western thing?
Yes. Okay. I would thank you for bringing that point back. When I speak to my brothers and sisters from the continent, when I speak to my brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, when I observed their behaviors when they came into the Americas in the early 80s and things of that nature, what stood out to me was their nature was multiple women off the rip. Like the Jamaicans showed us in Flatbush that it was okay to have a different girl for every day of the week. This was in their nature, and their whole male prowess thing was, I could handle that. Like, this is what we do. When I was living in St. Croix in the early 80s, that's what I was exposed to in the Caribbean, that men were womanizing. That was in their nature, that it was in their nature to have multiple women, you know, and it wasn't even like they were creeping. Was out in the open. You dig what I'm saying? This was a part of the culture. All right? When you look at Bob Marley going back into the whole rise of the reggae thing, that was in their culture. He had fathered multiple children for multiple women because he was spreading his seed and multiplying. He was able to pull up Bible verses and articulate that. When we look at what took place in the South, post-slavery and during the era of slavery, we also see that men were promiscuous and they were with multiple women, because you had stories of men having families all around town, multiple families. So when you talk to our brothers and sisters from the continent, they would also say to you, this was part of our culture, this was part of our tribes, that yes, if we can afford, if we could uphold our people, that we were able to have multiple families and whatnot. But this is where it comes to this is where the problem comes. Christian culture, or Christianized Judeo culture, or Judeo-Christian culture speaks about one man, one wife, one child. They focus on the one family aspect. Islam does not. So we're talking about Africa before the rise of Christianity, when they really started adopting the Bible, it was mostly Islamic. They were going with the Islamic cultures and whatnot. So that was still part of their culture. You have in the Americas, our people were indoctrinated into this Christianized culture, and they were with this whole creeping thing, because the religion did not necessarily stamp that, but they were still running out the back door, creeping. They had families on the other side of town. It was seen as unchristian to cheat on your wife or to covet another man's wife and all of these other things, infidelity and all of these other things, but it was still happening. So we were dealing with suppressing our nature.
The preachers was getting it in.
Preachers were getting it in, but it was still being suppressed, meaning that it was being hidden under the rug. So what happens to our sexual nature when you suppress it?
Comes bursting out. It comes bursting out, right?
It gets perverted.
Yeah.
You know those stories about the preacher man's daughter?
The Vatican dude, what's what the dude just got arrested. The third
highest official in the Vatican just got washed up. He got locked up for crimes against children, pedophilia, sexual abuse, and all of the things that the Vatican is known about. And on the Daily News, they had that on page 25 in the bottom of the paper. Okay, in the midst and like the left corner and whatnot.
So you're saying that's from suppressing their sexuality? That's a result of that.
That's the hypocrisy of Christianity and these organized religions and things of that nature. That that they basically took people. They came amongst people who had a polygamous culture. They came amongst polygamous cultures and brought the monogamous quote-unquote culture that came with Christianity, even to the point where they were telling certain men, you're not even supposed to have sex with women if you want to be holy.
So let me ask you two this. All right, I started out by saying I've been with my queen for over a decade, and we do a faithful thing. That's what works for us. If I tell you I'm faithful to my woman, do you think that means I've been Christianized or I've been westernized? Or the fact that I've been faithful to my girl, does that mean I'm brainwashed then?
I was talking a lot.
That has nothing to do with brainwashing. I wanna speak a little bit to what Red Pill was talking about in terms of the clashing of cultures in the way that we look at polygamy and the way that we look at infidelity. Culturally for us, spiritually for us, the practice of polygamy has always been connected to nation building. It has never originally been connected for the purpose of sexual or physical prowess. It has always been with the understanding that families build communities, and communities then build nations. So one of the 5 elements of power is numbers. And culturally, we understand that creating tribes, being able to take care of your village, having not only physical resources like cattle, like agriculture, but also having in-house community, which are employees to take care and to keep and gate open that community, is a part of nation building. Now, in Christian culture, they also are polygamist. However, they were taught that, and what we see now, which is one of the biggest social issues in America, is that you have to divorce that one in order to start over again with this one. 3, 4, 5 divorces.
That's a good
and
point.
that is a form of unspiritual, unmoral polygamy. That's not what we do. We don't divorce each other in our culture. We don't dismiss and negate our responsibilities, because it's not just about a physical thing. It's not just about sex. It's an understanding that we're nation building, and what happens and the decisions that we make not only impact us individually, but it impacts us as a community and as a nation. So we take care of one another, and we have the sisters to figure it out together. We have our elder communities to help us figure out if there's any kind of rifts or junctures, right, in our households. So that's the practice that we've come from. When we have been in these systems, in these colonized systems, a part of the dismantling and apparatus of white supremacy is that they dismantle our nations.
Facts.
Okay? And a polygamous practice is about nation building. It's about protecting resources. At this juncture, we're having a hard time taking care of each other one-on-one. So I really don't see a need. We need to adapt to what is needed at this time. And for me, that starts with 2-parent family systems, okay? If it doesn't work out, right? If you understand that spiritually it cannot work, then you still figure out how to blend and co-parent and co-care together. We shouldn't be dismissing and negating and abandoning ourselves, because that doesn't help us with nation building. But, you know, I think that we've been taught a warped way of relating to each other, which doesn't start with spiritual connection, which is very, you know, we're in relationships with acquaintances for years. For years. You know, and we're having spiritual expectations when the foundation of the relationship was never spiritual to begin with. Okay?
Facts.
To me, there's levels. Okay? The lowest level of encountering someone is an acquaintance, right? Someone who you don't have a spiritual nor physical relationship with. Okay? There's some basis familiarity, but it's not deep. The next kind of relationship you can have with someone is a physical one, physical intimacy, which is, again, base level. The deepest kind of way you can relate to anyone is having emotional intimacy. But most people don't start there. Most people start with the physical intimacy, and then they have expectations of getting around to building emotional intimacy, and it never happens. And we end up being in relationships, being unvulnerable, not building anything, having sex, having babies, having drama, having discord, having resentments with people that are acquaintances. Because there was never any deep spiritual or emotional intimacy to begin with. Because we haven't learned the practice of that. We've disconnected from the practice of that. So I just wanted to speak on that a little bit.
And I want to add on to what you were saying to drive the point home about how the culture or media helps steer our relationships off the goddamn cliff. Because watching soap operas, you were not taught, our parents for that matter, or some of us, for the ones that are watching this that are of that age who are watching it, you were not taught about emotional intimacy by watching Tad and Erica Kane on All My Children and General Hospital and all of these things. You were not
How
taught
you know
that.
those names?
I was exposed
As a
to that.
real term.
I was exposed to that. You were
General
not.
Hospital.
Yeah, you were not taught that watching Maury Povich. You were not taught that watching Ricky Lake. They were not giving you the keys on how to strengthen. You're not taught that watching Ellen DeGeneres. Okay? That's not what you're being taught. You're not being taught that when you're listening to the greatest hits of Death Row. You're not being taught that when you're watching pornography all the goddamn time. You're not being taught that when you're watching Love and Hip Hop. You're not being taught that when you're watching Basketball Wives. You're not being taught that when you're watching all of the ratchet shit that goes on World Star. So what it is that you're intaking, what's teaching you, what it is that you're paying attention to, that you're giving your time and your energy to, is basically taking you further away from the center or the foundation of nation building. When you look at the cultures that I'm speaking about, New York, I don't know what's going on outside of these borders right now, but the cultures or the different nationalities that are winning are following a protocol, and they're following a formula that's dealing with what? Collectivism.
That's right.
Cooperative economics. There are multiple people inside of the household. They're not having orgies, okay? There may be 3 families in one home, or there may be a man in a home with 3 wives raising multiple children, and there's multiple wives. But what are they doing? They're all working every single day to bring the money home, and they're also supporting villages in quote-unquote third world countries. While niggas ain't doing nothing.
Right.
So they are utilizing, they're showing you that the Mexicans are doing it, the continental Africans are doing it, the brothers and sisters from the Caribbean are doing it. They're showing you that their formulas, they're utilizing susu economics, they're utilizing cooperative economics, they're utilizing the fact that I'm not going to send my child to a daycare to get abused, molested, indoctrinated into Western culture. The children are being raised inside of the household, homeschooling and things of that nature. I know that it's taking place inside of the community, the conscious community, and other communities that are awoke and whatnot. I'm not dismissing that. There are different pockets where they're doing that. I'm acknowledging that. But overall, the 85% of us, that's not what's taking place. It's not what's taking place. You know what I mean?
I want to touch on a line in one of the songs on the album that I've heard addressed several times on my platform. Let me let this music go by. So yeah, like I was saying, then it's focus is I got a lens. I borrowed a lens, family. So if the focus, yeah, it keeps moving. But check. So a line from Jay's album, he said, it's not. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but he said something along the lines of, he was talking about Beyonce, and he said, I played with your emotions because I was emotionless. I want to talk to you. I want to ask y'all about men and their emotions. We often look at men who tap into their emotions as being feminine, as being gay, as something that's just not, that shouldn't be done. But now more and more men and more. I heard there was a sister that when I did an interview over there, I forget her name. She was saying that, but she was basically saying that men are so emotionless they don't know that they're hurting the woman when they're hurting them. Same thing Jay said. At young, they're taught to throw that shit out the window. So by the time they're 19 and the girl's about to stab herself and stab you, like, yo, you just broke my heart. You F my best friend. He like, what did I do? Like, that's, so and they're saying that that's a part of us being taught that emotions is a bad thing. Give me your take on what do you think about men and how we get rid of our emotional system at a young age, and if we do, if that's even true.
You ever got your heart broken at a young age? Huh? Peace. I was that dude at 12 years old who got his heart broken. I couldn't even eat dinner for 2 nights. I was toe up. That was a feeling that I never wanted to feel again. That began my descent into being emotionalist. I had to protect myself. So what did I begin to do? I began to build walls around the softer parts of myself. I began to build a tougher skin. You know what I mean? My scorpion shell got thicker and my stinger became more prominent. So if you got close, I would hit you. I would sting because I didn't want anybody getting that close to me, because I always remember my pain body would always remind me what it felt like to be hurt and be vulnerable and to come into any situation heart first, or my heart on my sleeves. That was a no-no. Once I tasted that shit one time, I was like, hell to the no. So as the youth, and then I had a culture that supported me being heartless. Then I had a culture that supported me being ice cold. Then I had a culture that supported me turning off from wearing my heart on my sleeve, because they told me that pretty brown eyes. What did the song just say?
Keep breaking my heart.
You keep breaking my heart. So I had to get one up on you before you got up on me, because we did not understand the tenderonis that were amongst us, the around the way girls who were, you know what I mean, being chased by all of the brothers in the neighborhood. We didn't realize when she popped up with a new pair of door knockers that the drug dealer, the Jamaican nigga from down the block who had 5 girlfriends, went and bought her. We like, how could you do that to me? She was like, I just wanted some door knockers. You know what I'm saying? So we was like, damn, this is a wicked ass game. And then we're listening to the hip hop and it's telling us don't trust them. Treat her like a prostitute. I remember hearing that song from Slick Rick and being completely confused. I couldn't even listen to that in the house. I had to sneak and listen to it. I remember listening to Triple X by Cool G Rap. I was confused. I wish I had Google back then. I would start researching some of the shit they were saying. But it began to change my mind state and take away this facade or this image that I had of this woman that could do no wrong. You know what I'm saying? That I used to see on the soap opera. Like, if she was cute, she could do no wrong. The Disney motif, what they taught you with the Disney indoctrination, this princess theory, and the music, or the culture for that matter, moved us completely away from that. Song by song by song by song. Then Snoop and them hit, then Big and them hit, then Rough Riders hit. I'm just talking about it spread the divide further and further and further and further and further. Then pornography hit. Okay? And all of these things factored in, and at the end of the day, we were comfortable in being ice cold. We were comfortable in being completely shielded from our emotions. We were comfortable in not allowing anybody in because we did not want to feel the pain, to the point where we completely get numb. So somebody could be sitting there slitting their wrists, and we thinking about, damn, how I'm gonna clean the blood up before the police get here. We not even thinking about the life anymore. That's how emotionalist and cold-hearted and mean we have become as a people, as a result of not being nurtured by our culture, not having role models and people who will tell us it's all right to hurt. That's what's making you a man. That's what's gonna make you that's what's gonna make you more mature. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta taste a little bit of that poison. It could turn into medicine. But we didn't want that.
On peut se dire à 7h30.
Bell Hooks wrote a book called The Will to Change, and it completely talks about the male need for love and talking about how men definitely have emotions and definitely have feelings. I don't think it's a question of if men are emotional or if men feel. Men definitely feel. You know, they would not be as interested in sex and sexuality if they didn't feel. They're looking to feel good. A part of sex is about healing and information and kind of reprogramming. And so I think a way oftentimes that men are taught to erase or not to show or express their inner vulnerability and emotions is to find ways to erase it, right? So that they can reconfirm that element of masculinity, which is power, right? To always feel powerful and be in control, right? Regardless of what might be going on the inside. A thing that concerns me is that I'm starting to see the reflection of that masculine expression in women. Women have become so indifferent. So, all right, it's over, bye. Bye.
Savage,
okay. Right. That's what they call it, savage. Giving men the reflection of things that don't help either one of us heal anymore. I find actually the indifference and the really looking at men and not having any deep emotions or not connecting to any deep emotions, but only wanting the sexual, I find that more concerning, that kind of indifference, than I do even these kind of feminist themes. Because at least the feminist themes are passionate and strong, and it's expressing emotion and our desire of what we need from men. Even though I don't agree with the stance, at least it's giving men something to feel, and it has men feel a lot. It has men feel abandoned and rejected and unneeded, which I think is a dangerous thing. But this indifference that we feel we're getting from men, I find women reflecting that more in conversations, in ideas, and kind of this emotionally void or independent stance. I mean, there's a joke, there's a meme that Rihanna is the type of woman who texts you and says, "I miss you," and then when you respond back, you don't hear from her for another 3 months because she's so indifferent, she doesn't care. Which I think is a real dangerous thing. So I don't think it's really a matter of men not feeling and not being vulnerable. I think it's a matter of them not feeling comfortable enough to or safe enough to express that feminine part of them, which brings balance to all people. We need our masculine and our feminine energies to connect together to express ourselves as whole beings, as whole spirits, as whole souls. So yeah.
And just to add on to what it is that she was saying, the fact that we were taught to find that emotional release in our orgasm.
Ooh, good point. Good point.
You understand? That's us tapping into our feminine side. That's how we become emotional, because we hug you afterwards. I'm dead ass. Like, that's where we will say, you know what? The only way that we could feel good with you is by busting a nut. That's it. It's an orgasm. And maybe the chase, maybe the courtship until we get there. If that shit is fun enough. You dig what I'm saying?
And but maybe with your children. Maybe with your children to feel emotional and...
So the vulnerability comes with the baby. The vulnerability comes with, you know what I mean, taking our armor off, putting our sword to the side, dropping our shield, and playing goo goo gaga with the baby. You feel me? For a little while. If you looking at me too long, I'ma toughen up. Yo, what you looking at? Chill. Move. What's wrong with you? You trying to play me or something? You staring at me? You trying to take selfies of me playing with my baby? You know what I mean? Like, they don't like that. They've taught us not to be that vulnerable. We can't even baby talk with the baby too much. You know what I mean? So a lot of men are chasing orgasms, busting nuts, spilling their seed, you know what I mean, by any means, however we could get it, whether it's in a strip club, whether it's off the phone, you know what I mean, whether it's with our whiz, whatever it is, a first date rip, you know, whatever it may be, we are taught those few seconds of feeling an orgasmic experience feeds that release of serotonin, that release of dopamines, that release of all of these different, you know what I'm saying, neurological transmitters. That's all we need to feel good. It's not about making you smile. It's not about building you up and making you feel good and being vulnerable. How was your day? What's going on? Is there anything on your mind? Do you want to talk? Let's just build. You know what I'm saying? We don't got to do nothing. You know what I mean? What do I need to do to make you happy? Mm-hmm. Not to say that that's not what our brothers out there are doing. What I'm saying is that is unpopular amongst our culture at the end of the day. Not because I said so. It's what you hear in the music. It's what you see when you go to the club. It's what you see in the videos. It's what you see online. So that's all I'm saying.
I got one last question to close it out. In terms of, we discussed culture. We mentioned culture a lot in this video. And we talked about Western culture, African culture. You talked about West Indian culture, the Jamaicans that you grew up around and how you seen them treat women. Do you think, in terms of, and us observing this situation with Jay and Beyonce and how we treat each other as man and woman, husband and wife, do you think, because sometimes it seems though a culture is a matrix. So you leave the Western culture, the Western matrix, then you're in the conscious community matrix. After you leave that matrix, then you're in the African matrix. After you leave that matrix, you're in the West Indian matrix. And it seems to always dictate to you what you need to do, what's best for you, how you should marry, who you should marry, who you should be with, what color the person should be. Do you think we should follow our ancient cultures at this point, or should we follow what's in our heart? Because some people would say the reason why we study history is because they know what might happen if you don't do that. So some people say that's why we should study that and follow that. Some people might say they ain't have it right all the way either. This is a completely different time. You need to do what works for you today. So what do you think about following your heart and your instinct versus following your culture or what your culture dictates to you?
I think a piece of what culture means are values that are applicable, not just beliefs that live in the stratosphere of your mind, but things that you're actually applying to your life. So you could have a lot of knowledge around a lot of different things, but if you're not actually applying them, then it's truly not your value of culture. Cultural norms. Any kind of cultural value is translatable into the future. So it's always futuristic. Values and culture is not meant to be static, okay? It's meant to evolve. Anything that's worth doing evolves with the time that you're in. So if you look at a lot of the laws of Ma'at even, there's so much breadth in them that they can be applied in the way that they need to be applied for the time that you're in. And I think for me...
You saying they outdated?
I'm not saying that they're outdated. I'm saying that they've progressed with the time, Brother Rich. That's what values do. Values evolve. Values are futuristic. Values are not static. Values are not stagnant. If it doesn't work, like, I can give an example. Pick up after your horse in the street. We don't ride horses anymore. So that's not necessarily a cultural value. That was a protocol or a law or a rule for the time. But that's not a cultural value. What I'm saying is in my ideology, when I look at least the idea of polygamy as it relates to your question of can cultural values and norms keep us from practicing what we need to practice in the time. For me, in this territory that I'm living in this space that I'm living in, I need to practice what I think makes sense for me is to practice single relationship commitment. Period. You know, we don't live in an agricultural society. We don't live in an iron society anymore. We live in a very technological society. And it makes sense for me to create a system that is sustainable for this time. And we're barely seeing that single relationships are sustainable. So I don't really see how we could apply the practice of polygamy when we've been so dismantled where we can't even have singular relationships yet. You know, that might be a futuristic thing that can be applied. Please show me, or in the comments, give examples of successful polygamous relationships that work for this time. I'd like to see them. I'd like to know about communities of us that exist. And I'd like to know what nation they're building and what's being built and what values and resources they're bringing to these kinds of systems. I'd be interested in knowing that. But the archetype that makes sense in my mind is a single relationship commitment based on spirituality, not physicality, not acquaintance likability, but spiritual values and things that you can apply to sustain the relationship.
Interesting. My answer to that question would be twofold, because I would agree that to approach modern day relationships from the heart, you know what I mean? Meaning that, you know, I want to treat my relationship the way that I see or the way that I feel is going to be beneficial to the relationship based off of whatever, you know, whatever that relationship speaks about. You know what I mean? Case in point, let's say that I was in the quote-unquote Yoruba tradition, or let's say that I was in the African traditional system, the Ifa tradition, right? And I have multiple women who are in this tradition with me, and these women are spiritually connected to me based off of, you know, ceremony, based off of the fact that, you know, we've had readings and they said that you're supposed to be together and you're supposed to be with this woman, you're supposed to be with that woman. The children are supposed to be together. The children are supposed to be raised together and things of that nature. It would be beneficial if you were to follow the tradition that the brothers and sisters on the continent and the brothers and sisters that live in the States these days, because you have the tradition alive right now behind, and you know, inside of America. I would have to say, you know, well, we might have to try this out. We may have to figure out if this is definitely going to be beneficial to us in a spiritual sense, like the sister was saying, to grow spiritually based off of what it is that we're doing, and as well business-wise and things of that nature, but the foundation being spiritual in order to make all of these other things fall in alignment. And then I would also say that, you know, going back to culture, you know what I'm saying? I can agree to what she's saying about the monogamous aspect of one woman and one man working things out, making sure that that foundation is solid before you go around trying to deal with anybody else. That is very important. And because of the multiple challenges that we face in society, because of the fact that the culture is a deaf culture, the culture is anti-life, the culture is basically backwards, there's a lot of work that both parties have to put in order to have a functional relationship that's going to flow in the right way. So you got to really work on both parties, man. Like Jay-Z said in his song about In Family Feud, if the family is feuding, right, nobody wins. So a lot of us, like, I have 2 children. Before I even think about any relationship, I got to think about those relationships that I already created. You feel what I'm saying? I gotta make sure that that's dealt with. I gotta make sure that that's functioning. I gotta make sure that the relationship that I have with both mothers are strong, the foundation is strong, and anybody that I bring in my life, they have to be in. We already in a relationship. It's already there because there's 2 children already there. So there's lifelong relationships that I already have, commitments. You dig what I'm saying? And I always have to factor in my children, and I also have to factor in the fact that I'm co-parenting with their mothers. So the women that I'm with, it has to be one happy family. You dig what I'm saying? So, you know, it's not a simple question. It's not a simple answer. That is a very complex question, and you definitely have to really look within. It deals with self first. Where you're at in your transformation, where you're at in your journey, where you're at on your path and things of that nature. Could you even handle multiple women, or could you even handle multiple men? Because the conversation about polyandry didn't come up, but that's also floating around in the community as well.
Tell them what polyandry is.
That's when the sister has multiple men. She's got to have it. No, she got it.
Nola, darling.
Nola broke my heart. That's why I'm like, I'm not built for that. I remember being a youth watching She's Gotta Have It, the backshot scene. That shit messed me up as a child.
Shattered everyone.
Shattered my whole consciousness. I was like, what's going on over here? They're having sex with my lady. So, you know, but I hope that this conversation sparks a narrative and more conversation, more communication amongst the family, you know, and this is a continuance that we continue to have this conversation, because the affairs of the heart is one of the most important conversations or narratives in this community, where people are dealing with core issues, where people are dealing with broken hearts, where people are dealing with the missing parts of themselves, and nobody wants to have that talk. So kudos to the brother for being transparent on his album, being open, being vulnerable, allowing people to say, yo, I'm glad that the big homie had this convo. Why don't we talk about this? Why don't we deal with healing? Why don't I admit to the wrongs that I did to you, so we could deal with healing? That, like you said, healing, when 2 people come together, ultimately. And one of my best, the best relationships that I've ever been in, healing was established at the door. Look, we coming together to heal. Ain't sex. It's not about the sex. Yeah, you banging and everything. The body's great. You know, I can't wait. But before we even come together and join spirits or join forces or join energies, there's going to be a level of healing that takes place. That's going to deal with communication. That's going to deal with basically sitting down, being open with each other, being vulnerable, being open. You know what I'm saying? Being passionate about healing.
Right.
And then when the copulation, or the, what do they call that? It's a word that I'm looking for, and it's dealing with the conjoining of 2 energies. You know what I mean? When that took place, then the experience was bathed in a healing energy. You feel what I'm saying? And it helped both of us. There wasn't energy vampirism taking place. Nobody was sucking away the energy from each other and walking away, making the other party weaker.
Because you established the intent.
You established the intent. I often talk about the internet and social media and the fact that that's top down. But I can't necessarily say that anymore, because if you go on my Instagram scroll, you know what I mean? The shit bottom up. So there's a lusting that's taking place when somebody's sliding in your DM with a phallus pic. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or a shorty is sliding.
Don't do that.
Yeah,
Ever.
please don't ever wish for that.
Don't ever do that.
Yeah, don't ever do that to this sister. Or when a sister is sliding in your DM and she's revealing more than, you know what I mean? I mean,
Don't do that.
there's so much being revealed outside the DM. Well, goddamn it. You know what I'm saying? You know, there's all of these Amber Rose bush shots right on your DM, right on the goddamn scroll. So it's like, how explicit are you gonna get in the DM? But when that takes place, is it top down? Meaning mind over matter, meaning mental first, meaning that I'm gonna build with you and learn who you are from a sapiosexual standpoint before it gets physical, or is it gonna be physical and we're gonna try to make it to the top chakra?
Right.
A lot of people get stuck right here. They don't even make it all the way upstairs. So
Well, I appreciate the dialogue. And on that note, leave your contact information for the people.
intercourse was the word that I was looking for.
Oh, okay.
When a person enters your course, all right? Go ahead and download the Know the Ledge app. Go and get that in the iTunes or the Google Play Store. All right, salute to everybody that has downloaded the app. We're almost reaching our goal. Yeah, that's what it is, that way.
You can connect with me on Instagram, Lucille Clifton, LucilleClifton.
On that note, family, make sure you support the Patreon, sign up, keep this channel popping, independent media, support on PayPal as well. I want to thank everybody for the support that you have made thus far. Shout out Aaron Ramesses with his book, The Weird Negro, conscious science fiction author doing his thing. Big shout out to that brother. We signing out, family. Peace.
Peace, family. This brother Rich from UGR, urging all my viewers and subscribers to help support the channel by donating just $1 to the UGR PayPal account. We appreciate the viewership and support, and we understand the power of $1. If you benefit in any way, shape, or form, we ask that you donate $1, whether it be monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, or yearly, so that we can build our brand to compete with the NBCs, the MTVs, and the Foxes of the world. I figured since Kanye could ask Mark Zuckerberg for $1 billion, I could ask my subscribers to donate $1 so I could make the best possible content possible. The main objective of this channel is to inspire you to become the greatest version of yourself. So hopefully throughout the years of you watching this program, you have been inspired to become the greatest version of yourself. If you would like to donate, you could go to www.paypal.com and send a donation to richandmerit7@yahoo.com. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your program.
I went from living like monks, living out back of the trunk, to pockets of fat with the mumps, pockets of fat like the clubs. Now I am living like Trump. Now I am living like Trump. Mimosas and posas, mimosas, samosa, mimosas, samosa, the Morris Costa Nostra. Pulling up in Testarossa, recharging the debt, discharging the debt, discharging the debt, recharging the jet. Swipers on deck, ciphers on deck, ciphers on deck, wipers on deck, wipers on deck. My life is on check, my life is on check, my life is on tubes, my life is a Jew, my life is on you, my wife is on two, my wife is on two. I'm going for 3, you know it is me. Bread is the pillar, the jet is my pillar.